Hello everyone. So today we have a very unique mix of IMK finance students who are placed in different roles like investment banking, private equity, corporate finance, equity research. So let's get started. Why don't each one of you give a very brief intro about yourselves?
Hi everybody, my name is Keshav. I'm a graduate from Delhi University, Sri Ram College of Commerce. My work experience primarily lies in investment banking and private equity, infrastructure private equity. And I've also been lately working with the Impact Investment Fund. So that's a bit about me.
Hey, my name is Vignesh Kamath. I hold a degree in economics, math, and statistics. My work experience, I've spent a year with EY, Ernst& Young as a consultant, and following that, I've worked with Goldman Sachs for a year as well.
Hello everybody, I'm Nitika. I have done my engineering from VIT Vellore. I graduated in 2016, post which I've worked with Bank of America for 4 years. I've also completed my CFA level 1 in June 2019 and I'm in the process of giving my level 2. So that's about it.
Hi, my name is Sarthak Sharma. I am a chartered accountant and I've recently cleared all the levels of CFA as well. So I've worked with two organizations, one in the investment banking and other in the wealth management before joining IIM Kozhikode.
Hi everyone, myself Piyushi Jain. I'm a chartered accountant and company secretary by profession. I have 2.5 years of work ex, around a year with Edelweiss in insolvency and bankruptcy court, another year and a half with Deloitte and financial advisory in business modeling.
I'm Jevin. I'm also a chartered accountant. I worked in audit with Grant Thornton for 8 months, and post that I worked in management at KPMG for like about 17 months.
So finance roles are one of the most coveted roles of MBA. So could you give us a detail about the entire process, like from the beginning, like from the resume shortlisting?
Can just give it a start and then others can build on it. So what I feel is, so every company differs in terms of procedures and in terms of what they look for, and every role also differs. So I think all of us are placed in very diverse roles, and there is no every role looks for different individuals, but I think they really value diversity. Like if you see, there are many chartered accountants here and I'm an engineer, so there is a value given to diversity. So if you have something unique on your resume, it does matter. But I think what matters more is you need to show a little bit of interest in finance in your resume. So I have a CFA level 1 and I have worked in an investment bank. Though I worked as a Java developer, I have some experience there. So I think that matters. You really need to show a little bit of interest. You cannot have a completely IT oriented resume and expect a finance call.
They do prefer diversity, and in terms of shortlisting, like we had seen more than finance roles were not really offered to a lot of CAs. So that's a myth which is clearly broken very soon. So all you need, like for the entire process, is not a lot of or extensive finance knowledge or basics of accounting. You just need to brush up on those basic concepts which are generally asked, and the awareness of the environment around you. So that myth of knowing, you need to have a lot of background in finance is really something which is not very true.
It's no secret that finance shortlists come off your grades also, right? So your grades matter, numbers do matter, and that's not something that you can immediately impact. That said, like a lot of people here have called out, I think having a diverse profile matters. Showing interest in finance is not as difficult as you think. It's about picking up some projects, working with, let's say, a professor in college, outside of college at an institute, or just picking up a pet project that appeals to you, that involves numbers. It's a numbers game, right? And then just sort of shows that you've aligned your thinking in a financial direction from the get-go before summers kick off.
Adding to what Vignesh has said, so is it necessary that the candidate should have some prior work ex or some internships in the finance related roles, or is it just fine like some pet project that he's taking up and he's showing, like for example, most of us do a lot of certifications online in finance domains. So will that also suffice?
I particularly did not have a finance work ex per se. I worked as a coder. Though I worked in an investment bank, I used to code. So I was honest to them about it. I was honest. And when they asked me few concepts, so there are few core concepts which you expected to know, right? Like those are the bare minimum expectancies. And those I was clear with since I had done my CFA level 1. And it's always a plus point, but I did not have it. And I think you can still get enough calls. Like, I don't think that matters.
And to be very honest, resume shortlisting is a mystery which is very difficult to decipher. I don't think that any one of us is qualified enough to decipher that
So true.
mystery.
Once you get the shortlist, most important thing is how you can convince them well that whatever work-ex you have had, or if you've not had, you're really interested in the domain. That's what really matters after the shortlist. So despite of whatever profile you've had, if they've shortlisted, they're looking for your candidature. So just don't feel that you don't have enough finance background, so you can't stand in, like, as compared to others. It's just how well can you convince them with your interest in that domain that matters.
It's a random process, especially with summers, right? When you've got your first year candidates coming in with whatever you've done prior to the MBA, 6 months in or 3 months in, there's not much you can do to affect the resume shortlisting, right? That's a pretty random process. But staying prepared really matters, because when summers kick off, it's a whirlwind time, right? It's a couple of days within which you've got several interviews packed. So preparing beforehand, not worrying about shortlists, but going with the mindset that I will get them, but I need to be prepared to convert the opportunities I get. I think that really helps.
Also adding to what Vignesh and everybody else OES said, so most of what we have with us is uncontrollable, but what we do have with us in those initial 1.5 months before our CVs do get to the recruiters is preparing a resume which speaks for itself. How do we present our points? How do we, how to prepare a resume and, appoint a CFA. Two same people can be CFAs, but how a person presents it is also very important, and that should be given a lot of focus while we are preparing for our summers as well.
As everyone has rightly said that it's very important to showcase the impact that you have carried out throughout your academic, throughout your work experience, and through that can also reflect through your work extracurricular activities as well. So having a balanced resume really works wonders for your profile. And again, having an interest in the particular domain is a given. I mean, those are the things that do really matter.
So guys, many of the companies had a initial workshop shortlisting also. So many of you were shortlisted for the workshop, and then I think they had a series of classes for you. So how good was the workshop, and was it like on an evaluative basis? So what did you learn in those workshops?
They shortlist a pool of people, and those people attend a workshop. Sometimes it is evaluative, sometimes it is not. The evaluative workshops, they give us a small piece of work that we need to do in the background, and we need to present it in front of them.
One thing to bring out here, right, is presentations are conducted by most companies that come on campus, right? How investment banks differ is, we've noticed a lot of investment banks, instead of talking about their team or the business, which a lot of companies do, also talk about specific deals that they have oversaw or advised on. That essentially being because a lot of information in investment banking is very private and confidential, so it's difficult for people to really know what goes on behind a deal, right? And we were actually privileged to attend that workshop and see the inner workings of how the analysts on the workshop, what they did or the work that went into it. So even the workshop in itself, keeping the evaluative part aside, is a pretty great opportunity to attend and learn about the kind of work that you want to do. At the end of the day, it's also an opportunity for all of us to gauge whether we want to get into investment banking, to shatter some glass ceilings or our ideas of what we think investment banking is, and then sort of take informed decisions on whether that's where we want to build our careers. I'd say it's a great opportunity. So if you get an investment banking workshop shortlist, that's something we definitely want to pay attention and learn from.
This is sort of first interaction with the company, right? There are some companies which have workshop after you get the shortlist. So again, that breaking the ice there is very important, because you've not had an interaction with the company before. So that sort of builds, I mean, it really helps when you're finally going for the final interviews, right? Because the learnings that you carry. not just your, the improvement points that you've got. So as Ritika said, they break you in a group of say 5 or 6 people. So the learnings of what others could have done better sort of really helps you when you are giving your final interview. So those workshops, if you get to attend them, they're really like a good learning.
After the evaluative workshop, I think there are further stages in the process. So like few of the companies have written assessments. So this time it was all online. So how difficult was the test level for you guys?
As far as I remember, the tests were not difficult. They were not discriminatory between a finance and a non-finance person. As far as I remember, they had given formulas with the case study, so you only should know how to solve the problem and not get baffled by the data which they had given. You should know how to just make sense of the data, and you're good to go.
Yeah, like Javin said, I think we saw multiple types of assessments, and like correctly pointed out, right? They're looking for specific traits that quote unquote make an investment banker, right? So some of them we understand to be attention to detail and the ability to function well under stress. So it was very interesting that one of the assessments we gave was a pyrometric assessment where we actually had to play a series of games, right, which would test how well or quickly you're able to think and think on your feet and you don't get overwhelmed. I think everybody here would agree that you can't really prepare for these tests, right? It goes to the core of who you are as an individual. The idea there's more to be very calm, be prepared, be, just sort of be true to who you are and answer. The technical assessments, yes, those can be prepared for. Those we had finance questions, but not core finance, not the kind you'd expect in a CFA level 1 exam. These were more general awareness of developments in the industry, a few quick math questions since you've got to be good with numbers.
Right. So other than the psychometric test, there was this very interesting test that I've come across. So it's an online test. So other than the normal HR questions, there's a specific test where they sort of gave like 1 minute to read the question and structure your thoughts, and another 4 minutes to record the answer. So that assessment, so it essentially had 3 questions where back to back, where you have to really think on your feet quickly and structure it very well. That was sort of a make or break round. So we can, some sort of preparation with, say, your friends or colleagues with some impromptu questions about economy or some discussions would really help to crack those kind of questions and be more comfortable facing those questions, to be honest.
During the online setting, we have seen that a lot of companies have changed their, assessing criteria from tests to certain other parameters also. So they have kind of tweaked their test. Initially, a lot of companies used to, conduct just normal tests. Now, from this year, they have gone for certain case-based situations, certain other those kind of test or psychometric test, so as to evaluate the other behavior or other elements of various candidates also.
There was a finance case-based GD round also for few of the companies. So in the online setup, how difficult was it? Because I understand, yeah, we'll be put into breakout rooms, we'll have a bunch of people to discuss with, but it is always an issue of crosstalk that comes up in the online environment. So how difficult was that GD, or how was it that you guys approached it?
Okay. Yeah, so in an online setup, it's really difficult to conduct GDs, especially when everyone is kind of so in GD everyone wants to speak at the very moment. So they have certain minutes and they want to convey their point in that particular minutes. So the issue of crosstalks really crops up. And so I have also attended one GD in which few of the people, they kind of faced some network issues also. So those kind of things also happen, that the flow breaks in between, some people get dropped off. All these things keep on happening. Uh, but having said that, it's really important to pick up pace or just try to convey a point regardless of what issues we have faced, or if let's say someone is trying to cut you, just try to put across your point in a subtle way, so that will kind of convey to the recruiter that yeah, this is a person with a substance and he or she knows how to put across his points despite all the difficulties that are out there.
also, I had this little trick that I used to follow in every GD. I tried to, so generally I had prepared for GDs well. So I had one or two good points at the beginning. So I used to try to bring up those points in the beginning. So generally we procrastinate that, okay, after this person speaks, we'll speak, or we'll speak towards the end, or we'll conclude. But I think in an online setup, it's your bad luck if your net goes and if you're not able to speak at all. So it's better to at least put the floor open, because your first point is always heard. And if you have a good point, just say it out. Either go second if you're not that confident, but just bring it out in the beginning so that you are at least relieved that you've spoken something. At least you have a chance, because if you don't speak anything, you don't have a chance at all. So yeah.
Like Vitika said, it was very weird to see that people don't like to speak, especially in online setup. I don't know why no one wants to open the floor. And that's in online setup, it is very easy to start a GD. I don't know why people don't want to open the floor. Second of all, in the GDs I attended, the person who was conducting GD made sure that everyone was able to speak. Because of course there are different type of people. Some people are very dominant and they will try to bargain every point and all. But sometimes it backfires as well. So I know certain GDs in which the dominant person was not taken to the next round because they used to bargain every point. So it's just pays to be civil. So if you are civil, everyone gets a fair chance, be it online or offline setup.
And I mean, through this discussion, you've seen how smooth the discussions at IIM Kozhikode are, right? So we had a pretty good time at Summers.